Okay.
All right. We are live. I believe. Let's see here. Let's get some feedback. Make sure everything's synced up there.
Looks good on my end.
All right, sweet. Welcome in episode 3 of the Jar Openers podcast. I'm already messing up my words at the beginning, so
We
want
got
to
to go
thank
one step
everybody
at a
for
time.
being here. We got a nice little list of things to go through tonight. We're going to start off with, will Trump be sentenced in September? Conveniently 2 months, a month and a half or so, depending on what part of the month they choose to do it. Will he be sentenced just before the election? And what will that effect be, if it has any, on the election itself? I know Chuck Schumer was out there saying there's 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. But before we get into it, Atlas, if you'd like to let people know who you are.
Oh yeah, I am Atlas Thugged. You can catch me on my own channel at Atlas Thugged. A bit more esoteric than most people, but I cover a lot of things from the right wing. Christian nationalist, Christian populist, and if you enjoy what I have to say, come subscribe to my channel.
Awesome. Let me drag this over here, and we will. Well, it's funny is I thought we were actually all set up, but I totally forgot to put the first video in the to load the first video in here. Give me 1 second.
It's all good, dude. This is content.
Yeah, definitely. We'll just watch us on the side and leave a blank screen in the middle the whole time. How's that sound?
Right. What is up, Knights of Gideon? Nice to see you in here.
Hey, bud. All right, so we were going to go with that. Add audio. All right.
Oh, so, yeah, we're starting with this one. Okay.
Yeah, we're just going to start with this one. Then we're going to run through some reactions. And something I'm really looking forward to is the Missouri Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, is championing this case here against the New York prosecutor, Aaron, what's his name, Bragg, and I think it's Letitia James also. I think they're both in on it. But he's championing this attempt to silence Trump's free speech, and I really like what he has to say. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and check this video out.
So at President Trump's trial, they were talking about how he might end up in jail if he continues to violate his court orders. Is Rikers prepared for that? Do you guys have those discussions yet? And if so, what would that even look like?
Our amazing commissioner, she is prepared for whatever comes on Rikers Island, and I'm pretty sure she would be prepared to manage and deal with the situation. As you see what's happening with Harvey Weinstein. We have to adjust, in this business, particularly around law enforcement, we have to adjust whatever comes our way, but we don't want to deal with a hypothetical, but they're professionals, they'll be ready.
Andrew Weissman, they're thinking about it.
Yeah, well, that actually is the right response, which is, many people say because the former president has Secret Service protection.
I'm one of those people.
Thus, he can't go to jail. That has it exactly, with all due respect, has it exactly backwards. The Secret Service is going to do and has to do what the judge orders. And as I've said, it's easier to keep them protected in a jail cell, not harder. Their job is to make sure that the people they protect are, it's not some nut job who's taking a crack at them. And, that's a difficult job that Secret Service has for everyone. But this will be a challenge, but not any more than, for instance, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama faced, when they took office, where it was off the charts what the Secret Service had to do. So, if the judge makes that call, then the job of the NYPD and the Marshal Service and the Secret Service is to carry that out. It's not to be, for the judge to be subservient to them. That really is not how our system works in a rule of law country.
Yeah, Lisa, my point about it has been practical. That judges are going to be very reluctant because of the practical considerations of the Secret Service, and we heard that when Judge Merchan was giving his long statement about
Yep.
how reluctant he is to use jail because of what it might mean to the Secret Service and the guards. But he didn't say I won't. In fact, he kind of said I will, but I'm very reluctant.
I will, and I'm very reluctant. And I have to say that has to shape how the DA is thinking about this now, too, because knowing that he's sort of thrown down the gauntlet and said, I will, even though I don't want to, that puts the onus on them to make sure that whatever the next alleged violation is that they present him with, it better be a really serious one that the public understands as commensurate with some incarceral penalty. Because, for example, the thing he said this morning about being upset about the witness that was called and they didn't have enough time to prepare and then quickly taking down, that wouldn't have passed muster.
Mhm.
So I think it's changing everybody's behavior, It's certainly changing the lawyer's behavior on the Trump side, right? Because somebody had to have gotten through to him to say, that's not kosher, you better take that down. But it also is changing incentive structures on the DA's side to really monitor themselves for the seriousness of any alleged violation, knowing what will happen if the judge agrees with them.
Sounds like a load of hogwash.
That was my thoughts. I mean,
dude,
Go ahead.
well, I was going to say just the way that they're talking about how Judge Merchan just is seemingly so reluctant, just so concerned for the well-being of Donald Trump, when this is the same judge who wouldn't even allow himself to be recused, even though he donated to Joe Biden, right? Like, I don't think
Right.
anyone's buying the fact that this guy's like, oh, I'm just so reluctant to be the one that has to do this, guys. It's like, dude, you have all these crazy ties. Your daughter was on the campaign team for the Biden administration as well, raising like millions of dollars. Like, the only people that honestly believe this stuff is the people who can only read headlines. Anybody who's read anything past the headline goes, okay, what is this? This is ridiculous.
Right. And I thought that was funny. Is she said the next time they try this, there's got to be something that's very clear that the people actually understand what the problem was. Basically,
Yeah, no.
it's like, because this last one, nobody knows why he's actually guilty and what he's guilty of.
Well, I think we're still waiting for that, right? Like every single one of these convictions was like a misdemeanor, but it becomes a felony based on this charge that nobody knows. That's still like not been explicit by any means.
Right.
And so it just carries all this stupid political weight to it.
Oh, 100%. And the fact that the judge told the jurors that if you feel like he's guilty of any of these three things, it counts as a guilty verdict. And there was 12 jurors. So, and comes down to if 4 of them felt that he did this one thing, if 4 of them felt that he did this other thing, and 4 of them felt that he did the third thing, but not all 12 think, in a line of that's still a guilty verdict. And that's, and then like you said, it was misdemeanors that they compounded together, that they added together, and the misdemeanors were beyond the statute of limitations in the first place, but they compounded them together and then turned it into some kind of felony, and then somehow it's 34 felonies because there's basically 34 receipts. It's so insane that it takes 6 minutes to explain what exactly the situation was. And then this next part that I wanted to show you, which is this Missouri AG Andrew Bailey. He is concerned about the fact that Trump has been put under all these gag orders. He's not allowed to say, like, Michael Cohen can't say, or Trump can't say Michael Cohen's name right now. It's incredible the Trump has to walk on eggshells while he's on the campaign trail. He can't even explain himself or his side of the story, because if he happens to say a name, they can add more charges to it or fines. I think it's more fines, but it makes them look bad. They turn into this huge next level of crime or whatever it is. So let's just play this real quick. This is from Andrew Bailey.
The prosecutor sought an unconstitutional gag order in this case. There's a strong presumption against gag orders as violative of an individual's First Amendment right to free speech. Bear in mind, the right to free speech protects not only the speaker, but Americans' right to hear from a presidential candidate. The prosecutor sought an unconstitutional.
And he's 100% spot on. This is like honestly probably the least talked about argument inside of the First Amendment and free speech and absolute free speech. which is that there's two parties in speech, right? There is the speaker and the listener.
Yes.
So it goes both ways. So not only is this gag order obviously being political lawfare and being unconstitutional against Trump, but it's also the people, the demographic, his own base, people who aren't even his base, now are not allowed to hear anything from him, being denied the right to listen to what would be otherwise considered free speech if it wasn't because of all the political lawfare surrounding it.
Yeah, exactly. And while Trump is on, and that's literally a violation of every single American's free speech whenever literally whenever they gag Trump like the way that they have. We all have the right to hear what he has to say while he's on the campaign trail.
You even have Knights of Gideon saying, "So crazy, I wonder if there's any word on when the appeals are coming through." And I think they're going to do whatever they can to prevent any kind of meaningful appeal process. Especially when we're getting word that they're already preparing Rikers Island for this to happen. And I'm glad you pulled up this Newsmax one, because this is right. Shows how the polarity in the country. So we just listened to the MSNBC segment on it, and obviously they're playing it and framing it from one direction, and then the way they kind of address it here on Newsmax is from the complete other side of the country. It's wild.
Right. And they actually let Andrew Bailey, somebody who has some little bit of authority here, that's bringing this lawsuit. It's an actual lawsuit that he's brought against Letitia James and company on the behalf of Missouri. And I'm not 100%. I think there might be a couple other states that are involved here. But in my opinion, every single state should be concerned and be filing, if not jumping on his lawsuit, filing their own lawsuit in the same light. And from what I understand, this is actually still on the table, or could be wrong, but this was still on the table for the Supreme Court to make a ruling. But let's go ahead and play this real quick.
Can you sort of elaborate what's at stake for the former president when it comes to actually following through on these gag order restrictions? What must he do, and what could happen if he were to maybe send out that Truth Social post that he shouldn't?
Well, certainly he would be censured by the court if he violates the order, but the order is illegal, and that's why we've got to get it overturned at the Court of Appeals. I mean, one of the elements that the court looks at in gauging the validity of these gag orders is the right to a fair trial. Well, it's President Trump's right to the fair trial. So how could he be prejudiced by his own speech? Basically, what's happened here is you've got a prosecutor and a judge who don't like President Trump, don't like that he's going to speak out against him, and want to silence him. We've seen that time and time again. And again, we have fought that in other contexts. We fought that in the case of Missouri v. Biden to end government censorship on big tech, and we're going to end it in the court system as well.
Can you sort of elaborate what's at
Sorry, I quit. Keep missing the very end of them.
Well,
I'm not
fine.
watching the little timer, but yeah, it's pretty important that, like I see it here from Knights and Gideon, could bring a class action of states versus the quack judge. Yeah, that'd be nice. I think that would actually expedite the process from the Supreme Court and force them to make some type of ruling. And if they had a stack of lawsuits from every state, or a bunch of states at least, you kind of wouldn't expect states like Colorado or California to jump in on this one, but
I mean, the unfortunate thing is we already saw kind of an example of this, I believe in 2020, when Texas sued Pennsylvania over what they did that was unconstitutional regarding the mail-in ballots, and the Supreme Court, refused to hear it out. They
Right.
actually just tossed it. They, on the well, I forget what that terminology
It's
is,
called
but on just basic grounds. Yeah, on standing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
who
that's-
knows? I mean, even though we do have like a more kind of conservative centric Supreme Court, if they were unwilling to hear a case of that magnitude, and this one being, a bit more, in my opinion, have more gravity to what's going to happen with the election, especially when you want to kind of garner all of this under election interference, right? Like this whole entire thing is this big drawn up idea to just demune Trump's influence as much as possible, on top of putting clamps on his free speech. I guess I myself personally have a little faith that the Supreme Court would choose to do anything at all.
Right, and I'm right there with you. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Supreme Court kick this back and say that, we need more, whatever, throw it out on standing as well. Say, no, you guys can work it out between yourselves, some type of thing like that. And I'm vaguely remember there might actually have been a response, but I don't think it was an official response from the Supreme Court on this. But I got one more video here. I didn't actually watch this one ahead of time. This was one that you stuck in here for us, so I don't want to skip over it. But let's check this one out too.
This, I wonder if this might actually be a shorter clip of one we already watched. You might as well go ahead and play it and see.
Okay.
Oh, it's Twitter's doing that thing
Thinking.
where it's going to buffer. Yeah.
Let's just close it and do another one here. It might be because I have this one still.
What's at stake?
Corner of my screen is blocked. Okay, let's try this again. All right.
So the other news that we have that just broke as we were coming on the air is a gag order from Judge Merchan here in New York City. What's this regarding?
So the DA's office had asked Judge Merchan to place a gag order on former President Trump with respect to his extrajudicial statements. That's a fancy way of saying anything he says outside of the courtroom. They asked for 3 categories of prohibitions. They asked for prohibitions on what he said about known or potential witnesses. They asked for prohibitions on what he could say about any counsel in the case other than Alvin Bragg himself, the elected district attorney, and any court staff, as well as any family members of those people that are made with the intent to or with the realization that they would interfere with the administration of justice. And finally, they asked that he be prohibited from making public statements about any prospective juror or juror in the proceeding. That's a recognition that just having an anonymous jury here through jury selection wouldn't be enough to protect the jurors. In this case, at least on my first look, everything that the DA asked for in that gag order, they got today with some really harsh words from Judge Merchan about the impact of Trump's statements on people outside this case and within this case so
Trump
far.
has appealed gag orders before, arguing that they violate his free speech, especially as he's running a campaign. Might we expect them to appeal this one?
We can definitely expect that they'll appeal it, and I think it will similarly fall on deaf ears because with each passing case, Trump accumulates a record.
I can't hear you. That's what that face was right there. The audio cut out at the end apparently. But yeah, I think that's crazy that everything that the DA requested, the judge just granted, and then he like added some harsh words or whatever. When, you know, what is Trump supposed to do? He's on the campaign. He's got questions from every angle of what's going on, and he can't say this person is saying this about me. He can't say, you know, anything. Literally, it's incredible infringement on his right to free speech. And you know, back to Andrew Bailey, I hope that case that he brings, you know, wins, because that would be a huge black eye for this case. And Letitia James and Eric Adams and what's his name? Bragg. Alvin Bragg.
Yeah, Alvin
I always
Bragg.
forget his first name. I want to call him Aaron, but I know that's not it.
That's funny. I mean, what's great is at least we got one of them right. Fannie Willis kind of went down in flames, and it was at least good to finally get a good attorney in that case and just break that thing open, especially with all of the personal involvement, the personal fund transferring over. I mean, I guess really we're kind of at a point where I think people are so polarized, they're already kind of have their verdict in mind for what's happening here. Obviously, if you're on the left, he's automatically guilty. Anything that these courts say, it's an automatic, like, oh yes, definitely, right? And then on the right, the whole time it's like, look at this scam. But I think the reality is like, it doesn't matter how much of us might, you know, see the truth. The reality is like, he is in the crosshairs. They have abused the legal system to get him to this point. And I think one of the quotes I even wrote down from that very first video we watched, you know, you have that kind of, you know, the smarter, more intelligent looking man said he'll be safer in a jail cell. Now, I'm not sure if you remember who Jeffrey Epstein is, but that didn't turn out very well for that man either. And I think one of my top fears, and I'll be honest about this, is I think that they probably think their best chance of actually getting rid of Trump is probably going to be by those means. It's not going to be one another like out in the open for everyone to see and pick apart attempt like what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, because I am someone of the belief that it is once again an inside job. And I think they're going to probably do some kind of weird, oh, the security guards fell asleep at the same time, all these cameras went out and we lost power, and we deleted all the video footage by accident,
We
and it
power
looks like
washed
it'll.
the roof.
Yeah, right.
We
They're
power
gonna
washed
find
the
some kind of
roof.
crazy way.
Yeah, exactly. And just add the next thing, right? The next level. But it's and things like that just go away, like you said. Like the cameras just turned off, the guards fell asleep, they weren't watching, whatever. It's just nobody challenges it. There's nobody with the authority that wants to bring any of that type of pressure, wants to apply any of that type of pressure besides the people, which oddly enough is who's supposed to have the power that these bureaucrats are supposed
Yeah.
to work for. But we're not the ones that are paying them in their pockets directly. We're just paying with our tax dollars that don't matter to
Yeah.
them at all.
That gets funneled to doing literally anything but supporting the country or even the native peoples.
Right.
I think there was a recent report of like what $453 billion just this past year went to illegal immigrants. Just mind-boggling numbers. Just stuff that'll just make you just
Right,
makes your day a little bit worse.
make you cringe, makes you want to hire a better tax person to see if they can't save you a couple bucks more.
Exactly.
Keep more money
Right.
in your pocket.
How can
But,
I scam the IRS?
I found this breakdown from Robert Gouveia Esquire. He's got a pretty good channel. He's a fellow YouTube guy, and he breaks down things really well. You can kind of see on the screen here. He makes these graphs and connects the dots with people and what they're doing. And this was a pretty good breakdown. So let's go ahead and just play this one real quick too.
It is from the Attorney General. We've talked a lot about him because he has a lot of good filings. His name is Andrew Bailey, and here's what he posted over on X. All right, America, I have filed suit against the state of New York for hijacking the presidential election by illegally scheming to jail their presidential opponent, President Trump. So Bailey says, I'm asking the Supreme Court to declare that New York's actions unlawfully interfere with the presidential election, to remove any gag orders against Trump, and to halt the impending sentencing until after the presidential election. It is from the Attorney General. We've talked a lot.
Yeah.
I think they should heed that advice and halt any sentencing until after the election. Frankly, if they try to sentence him and put him in an orange jumpsuit and send him to Rikers, it's going to create a huge set of issues as far as security for Trump. They're going to have to clear out a whole entire wing for secret security or Secret Service to accompany him. They're not just going to be able to throw him in general population or anything like that. I mean, there's going to end up like Dr. Evil with his little mini-me there and all the guys hanging around him, loving him. You have the one guy that doesn't love him. But no, really the reality of it is that it's unreasonable to try to send a former president to a federal prison, or is it? I think Rikers is a federal prison. It might be a state prison, but it's an island prison.
Yep. And I mean, obviously Rikers is it's got the name brand recognition to it, connotation. So
Right.
much of what they're even doing is just going for shock value. It's meant to appeal to, again, and not to offend anybody, but the lowest IQ voter, right? To people who just see him in an orange jumpsuit and they go, oh no, like we can't vote for that, guys. And basic kind of appeals to authority, very kind of lowbrow things. And it's unfortunate too, because it's very reflective of the fact that our population is very apathetic to just like basic kind of things that go on in society. And it's unfortunate. So when they understand that and they know the average person isn't going to click on the article link to read more, they're like, we can do whatever we want, man.
Right. And then, once they get him to Rikers, the cameras are definitely going to turn off and we'll have an Epstein style situation potentially. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think that's honestly one of the most realistic things we can expect. And I'm not even trying to like blackpill or be dooming about it, but you got to think, if the mugshot was one of the bigger bumps that he got in recent times, and they're right now currently we have President Donald Trump right here in chat saying, I ain't going anywhere. Good. Good.
Oh, that's a great name. That's hilarious.
Good. Right. I'm just surprised you even tagged that one. To be
Holy
honest.
smokes. President Trump is in the chat. We got President Trump. President Donald John Trump is in chat. This is a groundbreaking, momentous moment
I
for
know.
the channel.
I had to go to the actual the channel to make sure. I should have known because there wasn't a verification check there, but it's actually kind of funny. I do appreciate that. It's actually awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I can't believe that name wasn't taken. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah, right. You're not saying wow. Dude, I actually got him out. Made my heart flutter a little bit, to be honest. I was like, dude, are we about to go majorly viral right now? He picked us to come and talk to.
Everybody knows this is the real.
I mean, you're
president.
violating your gag order by being here, sir.
Just don't say the names. We'll say them for you.
Yeah, right. Just allude to him. Yeah, basic illusions here.
We
And
got
no,
this.
this one I think is the most kind of damning of all the reports from Tony Saruga. Again, one of the top kind of data scientist guys, someone who's worked hand in hand with people like the CIA for data collection on things like Google and election interference from like 2020.
Okay,
For both these fake laws.
I'm distracted over here. But this tweet,
It's
this
good
post
stuff.
says President Trump will 100% be sentenced to prison on September 18th. I'm told the sentence will be 1 year, but we'll see. The Marxist judge could change the sentencing at the last minute, but he is definitely sentencing President Trump to at least 1 year. Rikers Island already has special accommodations ready. This is 2 months before the election. My initial thought is, these reports coming out of Rikers and it could just be, a fear mongering tactic. Everything is essentially in fog of war mode. But then we have Alex Jones' response. The deep state knows no shame and they are desperate. Our sources confirm that a section of Rikers Island has been prepared for President Trump. Oh my goodness. That is just so wild that they would actually literally try to send him over there. I mean, the mugshot images are infamous. Half the people, so many people made it their little avatar picture. The beer cans that came out with his mugshot on them, the 6-packs I heard are reselling on eBay for like $500 now. It just make collector's items out of this guy, it's insane.
Yep. Constant memorabilia. Anything this man touches instantly becomes memorabilia. But I mean, and that's what I'm thinking though, too. You think along those logic, right? Like he got a bump after the mugshot. So, I understand that, the deep state is like dumb, right? But it's like, it's dumb in the fact that like they know what they're doing is wrong, but they do it anyways. So to think that they would do this in obviously such poor optics for them, it makes me think there's a much more sinister reason for why they're trying to push this forward. Because obviously the first time didn't work how they wanted it to, right? They were probably
Right.
expecting the mugshot's going to make the average grandma go, oh, like it must have been pretty bad if this is happening, to kind of put precautionary means in front of them.
Right. There's people out there. They think there's people out there that are going to see this as some kind of validation of the charges being and the verdict being more legit, which would be contrary to the reports coming out from at least the Republican side, which is basically everything that we said about, how the judge instructed the jurors and all that.
And I mean, and I think we could touch on that again too. The fact that they did that whole, if 4 of you do this and 4 of you agree on this, and they just were kind of essentially breaking what would normally be considered the typical process of how a jury is supposed to decide unanimously.
The protocol or whatever. Yeah, the precedent.
It's just egregious. But again, all these things are signs that like we really live in some kind of faux republic, some kind of banana republic. You got to look at the fact that Kamala Harris right now is the one who's been installed as a candidate, right? With no
Right.
primary means to even get her there. So no real actual kind of direct vote for her. Now, obviously people will probably directly vote for her come this election. But I think, as Tim Pool said, if she does win the presidency, and Lord help us if she does,
Mhm.
that is the end of the republic as we know it. And it probably begins the actual empirical version of our empire, right? Like what the American empire is. And the same thing with Rome, right? When Rome changed forms, this is probably our apex point in which we change the fabric of what America actually is, if Trump loses.
Right. And you'd have to think that, considering Kamala Harris's stance in the past, and then her vice president, her running mate's stance. I mean, the guy's basically he's an open and admitted on camera socialist. The famous statement, there should be famous at least, where one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. That's pretty freaky right there. The fact that they're so openly against or so pro taking away your people's gun rights. They don't even know the definition of, they like to use these phrases, weapons of war, which, let's just be real. An AR-15, the civilian version, what people, these cool ones that we have, those are not weapons of war. Anybody in war does not want to take an AR-15 into war with them. They want something that is actually way more capable of doing what they're supposed to do. And so they like to misphrase these things to fearmonger, and then, which gets the people to accept the government's removal of other people's rights, because, they're advocating, essentially, they're voting for other people to go to war. They're voting for other people to have their rights taken away because they're essentially scared. They've been scared to that point. And,
I mean, you're spot on with the war aspect. I mean, one thing I think most men are at least terrified of, and at least those who are of the age to be drafted or selective service, one of these candidates is bound to draw us into war, and the other one is known for being the president who didn't bring us into any new wars. And breaking a long line of non involvement in the Middle East or even other areas.
Right.
And so I think you look at that from that lens too. It's like you're essentially going to kind of guarantee the fact that whether it's in Ukraine or whether the Middle East tensions continue to rise, with the Kamala Harris as the lead there, it essentially guarantees we will be going to war. And there's already been reports too, when she had a very, very weak hand, when it came to the Netanyahu visit, when he came to Congress, she didn't show up. And then there was allegations and reports, which I don't think were ever confirmed, but they do exist still, that she told Netanyahu he needs to de-escalate or begin to de-escalate. And he laughed at her. And it was so awkward, she just walked away. So if that is what we have to look forward to being the helm of what's going to be taken over for this country, I think every 18-year-old boy or 17-year-old, anyone, 14-year-olds even, who are going to be 18 at the end of her presidency, you need to be terrified and hoping that the people who can vote, make the right choice come this fall.
Right. And the parents of those children too. I mean, nobody wants to send their kids away to fight a foreign war. Maybe you do, but the majority of people don't, in my opinion.
Right. And that's the thing too. It's like, what sentiment in the grassroots do you have of anyone that you've ever known, talked to across the aisle, political sides, that they are wanting to go to war? Right. Like I've never walked into somebody and had a political conversation. They're like, you know what I really want to do? I want to invade Canada. Like it's just like it's not a sentiment that we hold here. Like we're a very peaceful nation. We want that to continue. It is really only the elites who constantly push for this over and over and over again, and we just go along with it because they eventually just drag us into these things, or they'll do things where they try to get our consent. And like I speak to this with similar to what you see in the weapons of mass destruction, but it seems like even currently with what's going on in the UK as well as the Middle East, there's like rising sentiment in these mainstream pieces that's like, oh man, like isn't Islam so bad? Like, don't you guys want to go and stop Islam? And it's like it's trying to kind of drudge up the sentiment with the people, where it's like, yeah, it is okay, we wipe these people off the face of the earth. That is what we should go and do. And it's just like you begin to see these trends rise, and then on the verge of like a change of shift at the helm, it doesn't bode well for the future, for anybody's future. Right.
It reminds me of the weapons of mass destruction that Iraq supposedly had, and they get everybody riled up, and then everybody's like, okay, well, we got to go and we got to go and get revenge for 9/11 essentially. And then it turns into we're searching for weapons of mass destruction. And then, they end up with this campaign. Sorry, my dog keeps barking and distracting me.
No, you're fine.
We end up with this enough people willing to send people over is basically what I'm getting at. The propaganda used against our own country essentially got people fighting from the left and the right for we need war, we don't need war. And it's funny how kind of the roles have reversed even in that short of amount of time. I mean, I guess it's 20 years, but back then it was the right or the Republicans that were like, we got to go get them. And the left were like, we haven't found any weapons of mass destruction. I remember having these conversations with my friends, and now it's like the right almost is like, bro, we need to quit funding Ukraine. We need to quit, you know, we need to make sure that our own borders are secure before we keep sending this over. And it's so funny because I don't know, I guess to this point for me, I'm just on the side of humanity and pro-human, as Alex Jones says. And
I mean, well, the one thing I was going to say, because before we move away from it, is, you know, I don't, if people do get a chance, I think some of the things that people should look up are some of the testimonials from former veterans, especially because a lot of these also are very, very horrifying stories. Many veterans have committed suicide because of these instances that they can't come back from, especially when they do realize things such as the fact that they were lied to by the government. And that's what led them into going into breaking into some random kind of Palestinian's home, blowing the doors off of some Iranian villages, like, you know, and just doing things because they were told to. And they were, but it was more than that they were told to. It's because they had been lied to and led to believe that, like, this is the right thing to do. This is, you're doing the good thing for America, right?
right.
And it's sad because there's been many of these guys who have gone on to either, you know, take their own lives or unalive themselves, I guess I should say.
Mhm.
And then there are some that will spend the rest of their lives trying to ensure that other men don't go into military service because of the way that they were lied to. And it's like, please don't follow this path. There's better things you can do with yourself. And I think you rip or combine all this together, and then you end up having these situations where we can't reach recruiting numbers. Everyone is just so kind of like, there's no sentiment at all to be in conflict. Nobody wants to be involved with these things. And anybody with like the slightest amount of political background goes like, I'm not fighting for these people. I'm not going to go die in the Middle East. Like, no way. Not a chance.
Right. And anybody with actual physical experience of going over there or having a parent go over there or, you know, sibling or whatever, aunt, uncle, they learn that, why did I support that? Why did you volunteer? You know, and it's kind of like the hindsight being 2020 type of thing. I guess maybe the reason why the roles possibly reversed in that aspect is that some people learn from their mistakes, and you have a new wave of people that haven't learned yet. I guess, I don't know. And some of it's just selfishness, you know, like people that are never going to fight a war. Their kids are never going to fight a war. They go and they vote for it, you know, and a lot of those people, or at least in the leadership, they might have a connection to the military industrial complex one way or another, whether it be the stock that they're holding or whatever, and make a quick buck. Just, you know, simply, I think was it Lockheed stock when everything
Lockheed
dropped?
Martin.
Yeah, when everything dropped a couple weeks ago, I think it was Lockheed or maybe it was Raytheon. One of these stocks just completely spiked, and
Yep.
you know, there was people that were just waiting for that and immediately sold. You know what I mean? And they walked away with their little golden parachute that was on the side that, you know what I mean? And
The Nancy
can't put it-
Pelosi's of the world.
yeah, the Nancy Pelosi, she's the best example of it, even though I don't think she's even the most profitable in that group nowadays, but she's not the most profitable. She's very profitable, but she's not the most. She's not the
And I
most
mean,
anymore.
what's one of the top complaints, right, with our politicians? They're all old. They're all these really, really old people. And,
Right.
you know, that's even outside of just like the election thing where people are like, can't we just have a president that's like a decent age? I mean, it's all of them. It's all these decrepit old people who are in Congress. You know, I think this kind of speaks to the fact maybe we do need to look at the age limits, especially the 35-year-old age limit for presidency, a lot of these other kind of guidelines to get people in, because it does put this incentive where they can vote for war and they'll never have to worry about it because they're always going to be sitting outside of the age range for selective service. You know, and you have just a guy in here commenting saying, sadly, I really think Harris will win. She's a good representation of the majority while slim in the country. And I think this sentiment's been getting shared quite a bit. This is something that we even talked about recently, which is with those emotional reactions regarding the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, regarding the Joe Rogan situation. I think a lot of people in the back of their mind do fear for the fact that all of the markets say that she is leading in the polls, the Pauly market, the money market, as well as the Reuters polls and all the other ones that are normally kind of buffed anyways.
Even the betting stuff now too, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
I
and I
haven't
think
looked.
it's
I
still
haven't
sitting at
looked
like
lately.
34 shares, 34 million, I should say.
Yeah, it's wild. And the irony is just she goes out there in one of her last little speeches, and what she had the rapper I hesitate to call her a rapper, Megan the Stallion, up there twerking, talking about her crotch and stuff like that. And that's somehow more popular than the guy that's saying, I want the best for Americans. And he comes out to Proud to Be an American, song. It's just so
Yeah,
opposite. It's crazy. It's literally Idiocracy. It's the movie.
I know. It's so, but it speaks to like, it's just like there's no real morality in it, right? It goes back to shock value. That's what she's using, right? It was more than Megan the Stallion. I think it was maybe Ice Spice, or was it? It wasn't Nicki Minaj. It's one of those other like,
Mhm.
And again, I was going to ask you, like, they're not rappers, what are they?
Yeah,
Like,
right. I don't
like they're
know.
just kind of like they're like these hybrids between like,
singing strippers. I don't really
yeah,
know.
singing strippers. Yeah. Like
Melodious
OnlyFans rapping
strippers.
rappers. Yeah. But that's what they did, right? That's how they're rallying the people. And and I think and especially when you look at some of these numbers too, and I think the last time I looked at it, in Gen Z, well over it's like 34% of Gen Z identifies as homosexual, non-binary, or any one of those other categories that's not heteronormative. And I think, well, you begin to have to appeal much, much less to anything standard when the culture that is underneath everything has been rotted to the absolute core. When
Right.
there's no foundations on anything, and the foundation does become like, well, we just should be nice, right? At the base level, it's like, well, everyone should just be nice. And Donald Trump is painted as a man who's not nice. It's like, it's not a hard sell for any of those people, to
Right.
vote for Kamala Harris. And it's identity politics on top of it. Like, she's a black woman. How dare you not vote for a black woman? Like, what are you, insecure? Do you hate
Right.
blacks? Do you hate women? And it just like, it becomes this toxic game of like, I have to compete with the identity politics. It can't be about the actual substance of the arguments. We can't even go to the fact that she has no policies, and anything that she has said policy wise is a direct copy paste of anything JD Vance or Donald Trump has said.
Literally, that's like the one policy that sticks in my mind is the no tax on tips, which I believe Donald Trump borrowed that from Ron Paul, but still, she can't come up with anything on her own. I check all the time. I put it in multiple videos from her direct website. I think I actually have it right here. I sure do. Look, I'm going to refresh just in case they added something. But look, okay. This is the first thing.
Something in the 40 minutes we've been on.
Right. This is, I haven't looked since like yesterday. Okay. So, but here, look, this is the first thing you get when you click on Kamala Harris's official page here. It's them asking for money in the form of donations. And the highest is 2547, which, okay, it's presidential, the 47th president or whatever, but she might actually get that as, any day now if Biden, whatever. Which I had a question the other day, and I looked into the precedent that was set here. I'm getting a little off track, but I thought this was an interesting topic because I hadn't actually thought it through. If Kamala Harris actually replaces Biden at any point for the rest of this term, somebody asked me in chat in a comment, does she still have the eligibility to run into the next two elections, essentially, or does this count as one of her terms? And the answer is no, this would not count as one of her terms. We have a precedent when it came to JFK being assassinated. The person that replaced him, I'm drawing a blank right now. I just had it in my head a second ago.
Ford?
No,
Ford?
It wasn't Ford. Regardless, the person that replaced him, he finished out JFK's term, and I think it was after it was pretty close to
Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yeah, Lyndon B. Johnson. Thank you.
I'm dumb for not knowing that.
I had it in my head and then it just completely escaped me. But he replaced JFK for the last like half year or something like that. I can't remember the exact time, but JFK was the president for like 3+ years. And then he ran in the next election and won. And then he had the opportunity to run in the election after that, but he was so unpopular that he didn't run again. He let the next best option, replace him or is the candidate or whatever. But back to
Yeah.
her website here. The first thing she does is ask for money. And I have a feeling that is what the Kamala Harris campaign is all about. They didn't want to put Josh Shapiro in as her potential running mate. They didn't want to ruin him. They didn't announce or even allow Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer, any of these people that the left, talking heads, these pundits say whenever they were asked who should replace Biden, and when they were advocating that Biden needs to step down from this next election, they would say Josh Shapiro. They would say Gretchen Whitmer. They were calling her Big Gretch.
Big Mike.
Yeah, but nowhere on the list was actual Kamala Harris or Tim Walz. And so it's curious to me that they would use these two, and now the only thing that they're doing is asking for money. It's like a money grab to with the expectation to lose, but maybe the American people, the sheep of America, are dumb enough that they'll go ahead and elect her anyways. And I hate to say it like that, but the reason I say that is because look, when I clear that off, the next thing it does is it has the asking for more money at the top.
In case you missed it.
Yeah, just in case you when you clicked away the first time, here's your next opportunity. But look, here it is. Meet Kamala Harris, meet Tim Walz, take action, which is sign up for their newsletter, and then the events, which that's going to show whatever events. I don't even know if she's going to show up for them or not. And then a store. You can buy your Kamala Harris coffee mug or whatever, her shirt. Oh, look, they got coach shirts because they're saying that Walz is the football coach, the friendly football coach or whatever. That's so egregious. It's just so cringe. Like, look, they're like selling patches that you put on your letter jacket. Like, this is an appeal to
younger people.
Like,
forgive me for yawning.
You're good. This is like an appeal to like a boomer class that actually had letter jackets. I don't even know. Do they still have letter jackets? I did, but I think I might have been on the tail end of that. But I mean,
did too. I think they still use varsity jackets.
Okay, so maybe they do, but I don't know. This is just, Biden said I'm gonna let the next wave take it over to the youth or whatever, and then they went to Kamala Harris, who is not the youth at all.
Right.
I get that he's super old, but this just doesn't appeal to like Gen Z or anything like that, who is becoming, in my opinion, more conservative or more Republican or more just anti whatever these people stand for. But I mean, look, she's not offering anything. Like, buy your pens, buy your hats, buy your coffee mugs.
Oh, those are some good shirts. What are you talking about?
I mean, who's that guy? Doug. Okay. The Doug that I know.
Oh, it's like a younger picture of Tim. I mean, well, listen, one of the things that I heard too was the faster they rush Kamala Harris to take over for Biden, that means then she will actually be the 47th president, which in turn makes Agenda 47 for Trump null. They're going to have to find a new way to brand that. All of his new memorabilia for Donald Trump that's labeled 47 all has to get changed.
Right.
So it's twofold, right? So you take the presidency and then you force a big money loss on the fact that Trump then has to like essentially change all this memorabilia. Now he could kind of stick with it and say like she never really truly was 47th president, and that could be one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all these playing these dirty games, and I do find I do think that at the bare minimum she'll probably serve like a month or two as president, and then they'll use that to roll into, I think, more the main argument being we can't just let the first black woman president to only have a month.
Right.
Like we got to give her another term, guys. Like, hey, come on, it's only fair, right? Like that is going to be the direction, because everything's an emotional appeal, right? It's don't you feel bad? Like, don't you want this for them? And it's just so gross and lowbrow.
Right. And then she likes to say, elect me and we'll do this. And it's like, bro, you've been president, you've been vice president for 3.5 years. Like, everybody knows Joe Biden's not in control. And if you're not in control and you can't do this that you're claiming that you will do now, then who's going to be in control of you later? Like, it's just crazy. We got this one right here that says all our policies are plagiarized at best. Even Biden's new policies on the border are stolen from Trump. And same thing with Biden's policy that applied to insulin, the cap on insulin. He went and revoked that. He went and shut down the pipeline, and then now supposedly they're pumping more oil than ever. It's just like
He beat
so
the war on healthcare.
right, beat it to death. But it's just like nothing's original. And if she's gonna come out here and claim that she's gonna do all this stuff if she wins, like it's like, well, then do it now. We all know that Biden is not the president, and so that might be a reason why they wouldn't let her officially become president, because then that argument would become super valid, because it's like, hey, you are president, even if it might be the next 2 months. Prove that you're going to be in it for the American people and start delivering on these promises that you've been talking. And maybe that's why she doesn't have any policies here on her website. Maybe that's not why she doesn't have any bullet point policies, because as soon as, you know, Biden croaks, which is another thing about Biden, you know, if he does, of course. But another thing about Biden is I heard just like yesterday that they are pulling Secret Service from him to go to Trump. And is it because that Biden is literally just chilling on the beach, not doing anything for the rest of his life? I mean, like an old man should do. He shouldn't have to worry about, you know, running the country and being the most powerful person in the world and negotiating with some of the craziest, you know, scariest tyrants on the planet. Somebody at his age and his condition should just be enjoying, you know, the last years of his life or months or whatever it might be. And so
one of the craziest things, if you remember during the Secret Service testimony, now I'm not sure if it was when Cheeto was still there or when it was Christopher Wray. I think that's who replaced her. Forgive me, I can't remember the names. They were asked about these security details and why Trump seemingly was like so B tier, or like who did they send with them? But then they also ended up asking, I think Josh Hawley was the one who asked this. Jill Biden had the same exact size of security detail, but she ended up getting the A team on that same exact day, even though Joe Biden was traveling alone, going to some weird kind of like, you know, probably Girls for Harris kind of event. And that's part of mind blowing to me, where it's like, so the first lady is given equal security detail as the president, even though she's going solo on an event. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? And you would imagine, like, if you were going to coordinate this, you would probably assign the B team to Joe Biden and the A team to Trump, looking at it purely from an impact on the nation kind of aspect. Not to say either one of their lives is, you know, worth way less than the other. I'm not going to make that statement. But just from a very pragmatic stance, you just think like that's laughable. But it's also, when he was pressed, Christopher Wray refused to give any details to the size of Joe Biden's security detail.
right.
So again, just, you know, all these things that point to they're doing everything that they can to force an error, like an unlikely error, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we left the gate open. Like, oh,
Right.
we abandoned this post.
We thought guys were around that building on the ground, and we thought guys were on the roof.
Right.
And that goes to that point too, that if something happens to happen to Biden, then they can have this excuse that, well, everybody was guarding Trump. You know what I mean? If Trump didn't need so much, then it's like they try to just spin everything against Trump. But this is crazy. We got Valiant Thor in chat. We got Upgrade from not from Idiocracy, but it's funny. We're talking about Idiocracy and then Upgrade shows up in chat. I love it. We got Valiant Thor. I love it. Valiant Thor is do you know about Valiant Thor a little bit? I learned about him from this channel called the Y Files. Valiant Thor in history is from what I understand, he's questionably an alien who and I think it's a myth, of course, but an alien that has been involved with lots of administrations over time and things like that. I can't remember this. I can't remember
so
the story.
Speaking to like what Tucker Carlson was saying with Project Bluebeam, which is like, he doesn't think it's aliens. He thinks like the government's been talking to these beings for quite some time, and we have some kind of clear military bounded relationship with them.
Right.
It tracks.
Right. It's funny. If Upgrade was spelt with 2 D's, I'd have to end the stream right now, because this is just, it would be too crazy. I'd have to go and pray or something like that. Stranger than the Pentagon.
We had Donald Trump in here earlier.
Yeah, so I'm saying Donald Trump was in here. Donald John Trump. We got Upgrade. Oh man, it was insane.
We got a crowd.
We're attracting the good ones.
Right. But, well, let me take the moment to say thank you for everybody for being here. We appreciate it very much. Helps us keep this going.
Yeah, 100%. You guys, appreciate you guys being here involved in chat. It makes it a lot more fun for me, and I'm sure it does for you too as well.
Yep.
And also hit that like button.
No, yeah. Make sure you like and subscribe.
Gotta make sure you like and subscribe, of course. But we're having fun here. And so just to round this one out before we move on to the next subject, Kamala Harris really needs to pretty much immediately put out her list of policies. Going back to the talking heads from the left that weren't calling for Kamala or Tim Walz to replace Joe Biden. They keep saying now that because it's very cult-like behavior, but now that Kamala is their person, they're saying that she's going to win on policies. And it's ironic that we don't know any of her policies, and the ones that we do know are the ones, like we said, that have been stolen. So
He says what policies?
Yeah, for real.
But I think that's actually bad framing, because I think everyone from the right is sitting here and going like, look, she has no policies. Like, look, guys, like this is like, are you really going to do this? And then here's the left. I'm voting for a black woman. It's like they don't care less if there's policies there. They're like, guys, we're going to change history, and it's kind of got like that same Obama kind of vibe to it. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And
that
what was, I think it was Nancy Pelosi when she said about the, Obama's Obamacare. Essentially, you gotta pass it to find out what's in it. It's like you gotta vote for Kamala to find out what she's gonna do. It's like, nah, I think I'll pass.
She's the mystery flavor, dude. You won't know what you get until you put it in there.
We got this comment here. There's so much from Valiant Thor. There's been so much secrecy and disinformation over the last 100 years that it's become impossible to prove anything in the face of official denial. That's 100%. Lie will travel halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on, like we've said on this channel before, this stream before. And unfortunately, the sheep like to run with those things.
Well, I think the most formative moment, I think, that changed the course of politics wasn't even the COVID. I think the COVID vaccine obviously helped, and it compounded what was also right behind it. The Jeffrey Epstein thing, I think, really broke the mainstream open. And it was such a very easily digestible idea to the average person to go, this guy is a CIA affiliate. He blackmailed politicians. There's a child trafficking ring that you're not allowed to talk about. And that is like, that makes sense to a lot of people, because then it's like, it explains like, oh, why this is why they're, they're doing all these ridiculous kinds of things. And then you compound that over and over and over again with COVID and everything else. And so it goes along with what he's saying, right? There's been so much disinformation over the last 100 years, and then you combine that on top of we're dealing with 5th generational warfare. And so it's like, this post was fake, this video is fake. You got to verify this. You got to go and check like with 2 different sources to make sure it's like actually a real thing that you're seeing. And then you throw in AI on top of it, and now half the stuff can just be generated. And it's like, dude, now we got to take this into a program, look at this. And so then once you make it a challenge for people to understand.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, once you make it a challenge to even understand the news, when people previously weren't even reading it, when words were just in front of their face, they're not gonna step up to that plate. And so that's why it's incumbent upon people like you and I who do things in video format. It's why meme magic is a thing, because you take these compact ideas, you put it in a picture that you can show somebody, and they look at it and they like, oh, wow, it's like they get it, right? It's like all the work's kind of taken out for you.
Yeah, and just to the AI point. Those of you that saw the thumbnail that you clicked on for this video, AI makes it so easy to, there's no real picture of Trump behind bars, but AI is becoming so easy to pilot that we have to have more discernment in the process. But we got this next comment here I thought was hilarious. Voting for Kamala is like taking a massive dump in your pants, then slipping on a fresh pair of sunglasses and confidently claiming everything's under control. Remain calm. And yeah, but I think I think Joe Biden actually did that. Did he just? I think wasn't that what Joe Biden did in France?
He like slipped over. Well, it was it was a military procession, I believe, and it was like he slipped on a sandbag, and then that caused him to have to like leave early. because he like couldn't stand properly. It was very sad. It was like, this is what you get when you put a very senile 80-plus-year-old man into office, right? Like, he's not going to step up to no plate.
Mm-hmm. Then we got this next one here from Knights of Gideon. All her policies are Biden, Obama, and then her identity. 100%. But the funny
Yep.
thing about that is, I've been wondering about this lately. Was Obama? Was Obama even Obama? Was that his policies? You know, was Obama behind Obama essentially, or was it somebody else? And is that same person the one that's behind Biden? Or, you know, because a lot of people say, oh, it's Obama that's running Biden, but then I think back on it and it's like, I don't even know if Obama was running Obama. It'd be odd
Obama was
that,
the mouthpiece for the deep state.
right?
You
And
know.
so it makes me think there. But we got another chat here from Michael Schaller. The lady is so dumb she thinks that white people put tuna and mayonnaise on tacos.
That's hilarious. Did you
Didn't-
catch that recent event with Tim Walz where they were talking about food?
I heard wind of it, but I can't really remember. I heard something about like they ended up finding a recipe that he put out there that was actually like.
Yes.
Did you know say it if you do, because I would just be
okay. So, well, in short, really what the idea is, right, is so he has like this little sit down with Tim Walz, and Tim Walz is like, you know, I'm going to be super hyper exaggerating, but he's like, I hate white people. The extent of what I can do is put black pepper on something. And then somebody found this article where he made like this like curated specific like 5-star high quality fish taco dish that was like had 18 steps to it. And it was like, why would you just lie? like why would you kind of emasculate yourself for to appease the anti-white crowd? It's just cringe.
Well, that's the
Secondhand
white guys
embarrassment.
for Kamala crowd.
yeah. Dude, and honestly, the saddest thing about that is I think his name is Sam Costner. I could be wrong about that. It's the person who plays Sam in the Lord of the Rings. I can't ever remember what his name
Oh
is.
yeah, he's Rudy. Sean Astin.
Yes, Sean Astin. He is literally leading the charge for White Dudes for Harris. He's on the ground doing campaigning for Kamala Harris. I hope he comes to Columbus because I'd just love to give him a piece of my mind.
Oh gosh, it's so crazy. Yeah, I saw a guy yesterday. In the video I put out yesterday, this guy was debating Tommy Loren, and they were talking about the upcoming DNC or whatever. I think it's a DNC that's coming up, right? Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And she said, was there going to be tampons in the men's bathrooms? And the guy goes, I hope there is. And he starts patting his face. And it's like, bro, tell me you don't know anything about women by what are you going to do? Like,
it's so sad, man. The bar is so low, dude. Like, it couldn't be any lower. It's on the ground.
Tell me you didn't grow up with sisters or a mom or a wife, have a wife or anything. Like,
that fits for White Dudes for Harris, dude. That seems to be the mold. They are the definition of like, have you ever felt the touch of a woman?
right. It's so funny. You know, I mean, I don't know, I'm not gonna explain it, but yeah. There's a difference. There's two different things. Another one from Valiant Thor. The United States was founded in 1776, and she's been at war for 228 of her 248 calendar years of her existence. Huge money grab by the warmongers, and it is. And you know, the ironic thing about that is, the Americans' lives in America are more at risk than they've ever been through these open borders and things like that. You know, we're spending more money than ever on the military-industrial complex, and we just gave up an entire Air Force base in Afghanistan that now I believe China is running. ISIS
listen,
basically has a parade of our military vehicles that we paid for. It's just, you know, they spend our dollars and give them things away like nothing. And then, you know, it's one thing if you got a surplus and you're living from this happy, safe, you know, situation, and then it's like, all right, well, we spent a little bit. We were too liberal with our money, right? Ironically. And it's another thing. It's another thing if you're being liberal with your money and you're not doing anything for Americans. I mean, it's really sad.
I mean, it tracks though. I mean, especially for me, like, and this is something I even called, I mean, weeks ago, months ago, if you even, And I can't remember what the senator or the congressperson's name is, but I mean, it was leaked a long time ago, almost about a year ago at this point, that the number of illegal immigrants that have entered this country actually surpassed 30 million. But the number they were floating around at the time was like, oh, it's only close to 10 million. Look at these numbers. And I don't know about you, but I don't know how many years it takes people to not listen or trust anything the government puts out. But then you get even the Elon Trump space that happened just a little bit ago. And
Right.
Trump even said himself, he was like, some of this stuff I'm seeing, it's way beyond 20 million. Like, this is kind of out of control. I'm telling you, I believe the number is much, much closer to probably 40 million illegal immigrants and counting, because it's not stopping. You
Well, I
know, when I
wouldn't be
watched the video
surprised if they.
today,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I watched a video today of, again, you know, the same exact pattern, right? It's all military aged males. They're not from Mexico. They're not even from Honduras and Venezuela anymore. They're from the Horn of Africa. They're from all of these just like wild, out of place areas. Like, they're trying to find the most antithetical cultural individuals to bring into this country to make sure that our culture can be anything but homogenous. And so that
Right.
forces the incentivization for anything to be, well, we got to make sure we include these guys. Well, we got to make sure we include these guys. Well, bro, if we're trying to appease the globe, well, it's like very little you can do besides like you can stop at red lights and go at green ones. It's like, what other law could you institute into a culture like that when nothing is shared among these people?
Right. I mean, two things. The numbers that they're giving us are only the people that go through like the checkpoints, right? And we already know that the border wall doesn't exist. It's not completed. So I mean, who's coming across the checkpoints? That would be, only a certain group of people that are probably coming on migrant trains that have been trafficked by cartel types and things like that. But everybody else that's not paying the cartels, not going through the process, they're just going to try to make a run for it and not go through a checkpoint. So I wouldn't be surprised if that number is way higher, like you suggested. And then secondly, they like to use this phrase asylum seekers and all this when it comes to these, illegals coming into the country across that border. And they're taking advantage of people that don't have the time to actually look into what real asylum is. And when it comes to actual asylum, you take refuge in your neighboring country, the next most civilized neighboring country. You don't pass 10 countries to come to the United States and then now you're an asylum seeker. That's not how the law works. It's just an excuse of, these people are here seeking asylum. These, and that's actually not the reality of it. That's just the guise that they're hiding it under.
And some of them aren't even that. I mean, the only countries that are even like eligible to even have refugee status is like 3 of them. And then the rest of these are like, they're literally just migrant. They're economic migrants, right? It's like the better terminology for them. Like, they're coming here purely to just take advantage. And, this is what something I even talk about on my own channel, which is like, it's very worrying when like, it seems like mass deportations may not be on the table. And when you're looking at some things with like stagnant wages, the job market is completely gummed up. It kind of speaks volumes to the fact that one of the first things we should be doing is start scooping out all of these people, because we just can't support it. And so it even like, and I'm even one that's proposing, we need to go as far as to putting moratoriums on even legal immigration until we can actually get actual solid census data as well, because these things have a direct effect on the electorate. It's going to decide how many different districts are going to get drawn up. It's going to decide how many different regions and different states, what their power levels are based on the electorate, based on the census data. And so I think when you dump this many people in there, I think we have like too many kind of unknown variables that could kind of unequalize the system, like the status quo, I guess, what the electorate currently sits at.
Right. And then, then they like to I keep referring to these woke, talking heads, but that's kind of what my channel focuses on when I'm not doing these lives, is the argument, the debate between people with common sense and people that are pushing an agenda. And they like to say, what are you going to do? Just pull people over based on their skin color and start deporting people? It's like, well, I mean, no,
it's a good start.
You don't even have to do that. The fact is that, well, first of all, they are criminals. So you can't just look at somebody and judge them or whatever. But the fact is they are criminals. So if they are pulled over for speeding, and I'm sure if they're driving or whatever, and they don't have their driver's license if they're not here legally. Amongst the many other things, it's really easy to identify people. You identify the people that you can, and then you make a path for them to go back to where they came from. It's not we're going through kicking down doors. We're not just pulling over people that look dark skin or whatever. You know what I mean? It's really a simple process of where you start from, and the starting point. It's not gonna happen overnight, but what you can do is you can start at least resisting the influx by doing the things that you can do. And it's not this crazy, racist tactic that they like to project on what is it going to take this. And it's like, no, that's actually way far-fetched. That's not what would happen at all.
I mean, I think I might disagree with you here. I think imagine being the migrant who did sacrifice everything, who was promised by these people, these politicians who aren't you and I, who are elites. And now this orange man bad takes over, and now they are going to kick you out. Especially when most of these places assimilate not at all, and they form enclaves. They're surrounded by a bunch of other migrants. It's generally very rare that these migrants go off and disperse among themselves and kind of find their spot in society. They generally congregate in large portions of areas. I think you are going to have, if you did want to actually get mass deportations, it will be probably involving kicking in doors. And the second thing too is you're going to have to fight back against things like, well, when do you draw the line, right? Is it people who have been here for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? It's going to be another fight against emotional appeal where people are like, well, they've been here 2 years. I mean, at a certain point, there has to be some kind of radical foot down where you go, no, we don't care. We don't care if you're this old. We don't care if you are, you've been here for 5 years. You crossed illegally. You must go back. It doesn't matter how far your roots have been set since you've been here. You have broken the law every single moment you've drawn breath since you've been in this country. And I think that's really where we're going to have to shore up in the Republican base. You're going to have to harden your heart, right? If what you truly want is to bring back like the homogenized culture, you want to get back to helping fix things economically and fixing and solve the border, it's going to involve probably some very rough periods of time where we're probably going to see CNN, MSNBC playing like the worst body cam footage they can of like, kids being pulled out of places. Because that's the thing. It ain't just going to be like, grown men. It's going to be, there's going to be kids involved. There's going to be like old women involved. They'll do everything in their power to make people want it to stop. So it could be a matter of they institute it for like 3 months, but then the public, the favorability for what's going on dies in that period. And then you have like different regions saying we're preventing Donald Trump can't deport people in our state. And then it's going to be legal lawfare at that point too. Right. So it's got to be a very, very hard and quick and efficient action. Otherwise it's going to be just a slow draw.
Right. Well, I'm not opposed to strict and swift and bold action, but at the same time, which I think would actually need that. But at the same time, I think it's going to be really easy to identify these people. Yeah. You're not going to have to rely on a cop that's running radar and say, oh, brown guy, let me pull him over and make sure that he's here legally. Like because we are the melting pot. And we do have a lot of people from everywhere around the planet, which I think is awesome. I've used this example before, but just since the Olympics just happened, this is one of the things that's always stood out to me as somebody that watches it every year. Besides this year, when they do that parade of champions at the beginning, the Koreans come out and they got their little sign that says we're from Korea or South Korea or whatever, but they all look the same. You know what I mean? And then, the Kenyans come out and they all look the same, but then America comes out and it looks like everybody. You know what I mean? I think that's so cool. And so that's just a microcosm of the way our country is. And you can be an American no matter where you're from. If you go through it properly, or if you're born here or whatever. But the people that would be deported first are going to easily be discovered and identified. You're not going to rely on a cop saying, oh, brown guy, pull him over, let's check his papers or anything like that. It's going to be plenty of work. And I don't like a police state, so I don't want a whole bunch of new police officers. I don't want a whole bunch of new federal officials creating jobs that my taxes are going to have to fund. I don't want a bunch of new judges that we're going to have to pay to uphold and checks and balances for this stuff. The people that we have will be able to do their job. They'll have more ability And I think, like I said, especially if you point, like a FBI or a CIA or whatever existing agency of border control in the right direction, they'll be able to identify these people really easy. And then from there, you can send a lot of people back, and it might be kicking in doors and stuff, but I still think that those places will be very easy to identify the proper ones to do. You're not risking infringing on the rights of somebody that's actually supposed to be here that doesn't deserve to be treated like that. You know what I mean?
I disagree on a few things, but this is where I actually draw where I think a good distinction here.
I'm still listening. I gotta let her out real quick.
Oh, you're fine. With the federal aspect, right? When you do it through federal, right? And you have, the CIA, or you have the border control, or what is that called? Like BCP, BPC, or you have any other kind of federal agency be in charge of this. That's when you will get states who will then, on grounds of state versus federal, be able to oppose the actions. This is why it actually needs to take the route of
Like a
deputizing
sanctuary
sheriffs.
state.
Well, I mean, if you deputize individual sheriff's offices and give them the authority to carry out deportations, then
Right.
inside individual states and regions, they can among themselves carry out the deportations. And I think that's probably the better way to do it. And then again,
Right.
it goes with what you're saying. By not hiring and bringing on a bunch of people, you just give an extra job to people who are already carrying out those duties.
Right. Yeah. And that's
And-
that's pretty much how Trump said that he would do it, by the way, when he was interviewing with Tim Pool. Is he's like, we'll have this, the police will do it. We'll have we'll enable the people that are doing the job with more abilities to hold down the rules. Because frankly, I mean, it is their job, and the people are here illegally. They did break the law when they broke into the country. You know what I mean? So they are criminals. That's the
Right.
word I was looking for. For some reason, the word criminals escaped me for a second.
Right.
there,
Well,
but-
especially when, most of them have been given some kind of, visa. They've been given some kind of like temporary social ID card, whether it's like a temporary, just SS or any other, some of those means. It'll be very easy to track them based on just like financial transactions, things of that doesn't require things like stop and frisk, right? Like
Mhm.
I think that would be more so way down the line when
Right.
you've taken like the good top off, and it's like, so we have these guys who are hiding, we need to find who these people are. That's when you probably go to like the next step, where it becomes a bit more investigative. It becomes a bit more of like building evidence up against people, finding cases, getting enough of the actual consent of the law and justice to then bring those people to justice.
Right, and that would be once the first wave, if you, for lack of a better word, the first wave of problem is taken care of. So then those people don't have that heavy load that they started with, and now they can expand out or whatever.
Yeah.
The way I see it, at least, I think that would work. And then also just the people that are coming here, knowing that there's a higher risk of wasting all that time, effort, money if they're paying a cartel to be trafficked. It's just a preventative in the first place. Like I heard this phrase when I was young. We didn't put locks on doors to keep the bad guys out. We put locks on doors to keep the honest man honest. And it's like putting a lock on the door to our country, knowing that it's not so easy just to come right on in. But of course, the worst, or the criminal, is going to make his way in if he wants to, type of scenario. So,
Well, I mean, I think Trump makes a good point with the fact
preventative
that
measure.
you look at Venezuela, you look at El Salvador, you look at Honduras, you look at Panama, you look at every single one of those countries down the line. Every single one of those countries, crime rates plummeted. And that's
Mhm.
because they were
And
literally
their jails
dumping
got
their
emptied.
prisons open. Right.
Yeah.
And they're just like, get out. But what goes with that, though, and this is also what I'm going to use as evidence to back up my argument, where it's probably going to be very quickly going to violence and drawing people out of their doors, is because most of those countries said, if you come back, we will kill you. So if
Mhm.
there's nowhere for these people to go, and then their last option is like they get sent out and they have to go, go with some cartel back in Mexico that they came from, I think that's when you're going to get a lot of people who are going to say, this is my only chance. And then you combine that with the fact that there is a split of cultural kind of deference to the way we have civility and laws here, separate from the way they obviously were behaving in their countries. I think it's just going to be a bad powder keg, just ready to go off. But it's got to be one that we're ready for it to happen. And we have to be
Right.
like, we're doing this for the right reasons.
Right. Yeah, 100% agree. And we can't be afraid of being labeled, some type of, because the labels that they try to throw on people that are wanting to uphold the laws are a deterrent from people wanting to uphold the laws. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They're going to call it racist. They're going to call it, whatever. And it's just like, all right, if that's by your definition, then fine, that's what it is. But we're doing what's best for the American people by, deporting these people that are criminally in our country. And it's not our problem it's not our problem. It's not our responsibility to take on the issue that if they get sent back, they're going to be executed or thrown back in prison or whatever because of what they did in their own country before they came here. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like
Exactly.
that. And we definitely don't want them doing that crap here either. I like what
Right.
Abigail Shepard just said here. It's sad that wanting an American nation built on actual citizens is viewed as so evil nowadays. No other country allow this type of immigration. Why should we? And that's kind of to that same point, is they're not going to allow this type of immigration. They're just, going to pass them on to the US essentially.
I mean, there's a common theme here, which is what's also going on in the UK and the Western world, right? Seemingly any kind of dominantly white states, countries, regions are the ones who are told that you need to be accepting this. And
Mhm.
UK is getting to a point where we're probably about to watch some civil strife probably build up into actual civil conflict based on these grounds. And especially because they're going so far and beyond with the rhetoric to picking sides, demonizing groups, obviously on the far right theory. It, it it follows again, they're taking advantage, this exploitative advantage of the emotional appeals of like, don't you feel bad for these people? But
Mhm.
again, it's a bit racist, right? Like it's like show them a picture of a brown person, like they'll feel bad. And it's like, is this really the only means? Is this really what's been working for the past 20 years? Are we this low
Mhm.
brow that like you just can fall fall flat on your face for this one simple appeal? And we're seeing
Mhm.
how it's turning out, right? And so we're watching as an intolerant religion, Islam is literally sweeping through places because it is, of all of the other major Abrahamic religions, it is seemingly the least tolerant. And
Mm.
that's when you see all of these buildups of these enclaves. You see these small groups where Sharia law has become the actual mainstay of the civic order there, and they just take over different like apartment complexes and things of that nature. And that's what people are really, really kind of being tired of. And it's this kind of separation, this distinction, this broken culture. And then you add that on top of the fact of don't you dare be proud to be a UK white British person. Don't you dare at all.
Right.
And
It's
then at
combined
the
with that
same
lack
time
of
be like,
assimilation versus, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
right.
Yep. Hey, Jason, how you doing there? Jason asked,
What's
so
up,
do you
Jason?
think Kamala is capable of being president? I think she's capable of having the title president, but being president, no.
I think it's capable they will rig the election. I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think that is very possible.
Yeah,
Strong
Dearborn, Michigan,
possibility.
isn't that that's the Somalian population, if I remember right? Same with Minnesota.
I th-
Those are both like the refugee areas.
I think
It's
this Samoan is in Minnesota. I think Dearborn is the Muslim one. I remember reports
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
of
Yep.
they bought out like strip malls and things like that. Crap, that might have been 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe it was during Trump. But yeah, that's where it's basically turned into a Sharia law type scenario, if I understand it.
Right, correctly. And those
They
are the
want it
ones that'll be
implemented.
like that'll be the one where imagine the first day of mass deportations occur. Like that'll be one where it's like that's going to be rough. Like it's going to be rough because then you put the cops in these positions where like they're going to be in the mainstream media because the body cam footage will be released, whether it's through FOIA requests or whatever, and they're like look how he grabbed that one guy on his shoulder, like that was so racist, and they'll do everything they can to
Mhm.
try to make people want to make it stop as fast as possible.
Okay, the whole city is Sharia law. Okay. That's what I thought it was. I wasn't sure. I thought I remembered something about they went and bought out like all the businesses in a strip mall area and basically just turned it all into whatever they wanted it to, and like basically de-Americanized it.
there in all the governments.
But
Yeah.
I haven't focused on that for a while, so I'm kind of just speaking off of the top of my head from what I can remember from years ago.
The one I'm more familiar with is Ilhan Omar's district in Minnesota, and that's the Somalian one. That's the one
Yeah.
where multiple district winners in this past year didn't speak English. Like English wasn't even their first language. And so now when you have a lot of residents who are now living under the discretion of someone who, can very poorly communicate, it just opens up the door for so many things to just go wrong, poorly, obviously even outside of miscommunication, but people will just tune out. They're like, I can't even understand the guy, right? They're just like, I don't want to listen. People don't even want to listen when Trump is speaking as clearly as possible. You know what I'm saying? So you tie all those things in there, and it just opens up all of this, inefficient, broken culture.
Right. And speaking of Ilhan Omar, didn't she just win her little primary or whatever? With caution to talking about elections and whatnot. Kind of mysteriously how the count went.
Well, you aren't suggesting.
I'm not suggesting anything. It's just we'll talk about it like this. There was a lot of people on X that seemed that acted like and tried to point out that there was maybe something that resembled what happened around 3:00 in the morning during the 2020 event.
Yeah. I mean, I think specifically what you can say that we do know for a fact is that every single one of the other districts in her region were counted. Hers wasn't counted at all. While they were literally finishing up at 99.9%, hers was at 0.
Right.
Especially because it didn't make sense, because at one point they had actually declared all the votes are in for these elections, and hers was sitting at 0%.
Yes.
So it makes you think, like, how in the world did every single one of these districts know to not tally Ilhan Omar's votes until the end? Like, it was like, who coordinated that process, if that was the process?
Right. It's even if it was, and I'm not saying that it wasn't, but even if it was 100% on the up and up, it was curious how it was bad form how they physically presented it. You know what I mean? When, like, as you said, the other districts are basically, you see them counting, and then this one is not being counted, and everybody's saying, hey, how come they're not counting that one? And maybe it was, and they just weren't reporting it or whatever. But then all of a sudden, all the reports come in, and it's like, dang, I wish they wouldn't have done it like that. I mean, it's
right.
It's just for peace of mind. I wish it wouldn't have been done like that, because of course you're feeding into the conspiracy theories, the conspiracy theorists who are paying close attention to it, essentially.
I think what you say to that is, fool me once, shame
Right.
on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
And here's a visual of it, basically. I think this is fair to show. A post from End Wokeness. And this is kind of the timeline of how, and this is the truth, and that's why it's so curious, and why people point it out. Trying to be cautious, but you know what I'm saying. It's 100% legitimate and nothing at all suspicious. And congrats to Ilhan Omar, who was the first of the squad to actually win her re-election in this turn of elections. So,
this is what I will say though. We had 4 years to adjust how we do these elections, right? We had 4 years to, any attorney general could sue on grounds of open sourcing the voting ballot, the voting machines. We've had 4 years for any kind of attorney general to step in and make sure that Dominion voting machines aren't the only source of machinery that we use. 4 years to do all of these things that just didn't happen. And it speaks to the fact that most of the GOP, the people who sit in these positions, are there for selfish gain. They clearly not are fighting for the American people's interests. All of these things. I mean, the only two that you can even mention that I think are even doing anything meaningful is the Missouri AG, who's the only AG in the state who's actually sued the Biden administration. Believe it or not, there's 50 of them, and only one did it with all the evidence out there.
It is only one. I thought I saw a report that there was a few, but I didn't see what they're actually doing specifically, and they definitely don't have an AG out there heading up the, being the face of it. Sorry,
Right.
go ahead.
No, I was just, and the only thing I was going to add to that was like Glenn Youngkin essentially used his executive order power to ensure that the paper ballots will be the only way that they can vote. And you see, like, why is that not being commonplace, right? Like, you are dealing with a population that is at the, what's the right word? Anxious isn't really the right word. Very suspect of how these things are going down. And if you want to ensure absolute chaos, you would ensure that nothing changed from last time. And let alone the 4 years before that, because obviously in 2016, you have that's when the Russians, the Steele dossier, oh, Russia stole the election, right? And then it's flip-flop, the other opponent wins, and you have this going on with with Biden, and everyone's disagreements with what happened to the election then. It just, we've had how much and how long? What are these people doing?
Right. Yeah, 100%. It's like, how are they? What have they been doing? Seems like they spend a lot of money. They vote on bills that have 1,000 pages that they don't vote, or that they don't read,
Right.
which should be a felony to vote on a bill and not read every single word of it and understand it. But that's a whole nother subject.
Well, I think Matt Gaetz tried, right? Well, I believe it was Matt Gaetz who proposed that. There was
Marjorie Taylor Greene, I know, was behind that too a little bit. I don't know if she actually proposed it, but I know she was pointing it out that these folks were just basically voting remotely on things and not reading and not even showing up. And during her first little term where they wouldn't put her on committees, she was actually bored. So she was like making people call. I can't remember the technical term for it, the official term for it, but she was basically
she was forcing roll call.
Yeah, roll call. Thank you. Yeah, she was forcing roll call, making people actually put their name behind their vote and exposed quite a bit. Just even going on the podcast like Tim Pool's and things like that. That's why platforms like this are important to pay attention to, because you can actually hear the information from the people's mouths directly, rather than having to siphon through fake news or what's fake news or what isn't fake news. You can hear people legitimately just engage in conversation, and it's a lot easier to decipher truths and fiction from people when you can see their face talking and stuff like that. And
I mean, I think it might even been Thomas Massey. They tried to get the omnibus kind of bills, the way everything's packaged together. I think they tried to legislate like single bill voting only, and Congress is like, can't do that, because the omnibus is the only way that they can shove in all of these like weird little things and these weird agendas, because it stems back to the fact that so many of these politicians have donors that they have to pay homage to. So they have to ensure that they always carrying their donors' interest first and foremost. That way they can get the $10,000 or $10 million to Pakistani gender studies, or they can get some kind of crazy cash infusion for some weird, woke ideology crap that just like has nothing to do with like things like the Green New Deal, has nothing to do with like, preventing politicians from having insider training, things like that. Like they just all oppose it because they're definitely not going to vote against their own personal interests.
Right. I mean, all their kids go to the same schools, all their they're playing on the same sports teams. It's just kind of a political parade whenever they act like they hate each other and on camera, you know what I mean? But really they're all co-workers. And there's some people that stand out. You named some of them: Matt Gaetz, Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Anna Paulina Luna, who recently was in the news. These people are actually, I think, more in it for the American people rather than for themselves. But they're the minority, unfortunately, and they're the ones that face the highest amount of scrutiny from the mainstream media, which is the deep state or the swamp fighting back. And that's kind of how when you're paying attention, you realize that when they treat Donald Trump the same way, that when they treat anybody that way, it seems like that's the person that you should vote for. That's the person that, that person's on the right track for America and Americans. Essentially, it's so weird, but
they're like, wait, all the politicians and the whole government hates this guy. I'm voting for that one, dude.
I think I like him.
Yeah, right. I love him now.
Right.
I don't even care what he's doing.
I gotta look into more of him and find out.
Something right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
we go
let's
to monkeypox now. Yeah.
Yeah, let's move on to this next topic for a little bit, and then we'll maybe do some one-offs on the way out. Want to kind of talk about the Anna Paulina Luna thing because that one's been getting a lot of traction there on X and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I like the response from the people under that. They're behind that. But let's see here. We got this post. We're gonna move on from sudden and unexpected. Will you be locked down? You know, and that's the thing. Everybody's aware of that lockdowns and, you know, the COVID whole thing was a big factor with the timing of the last election, essentially. So, will you be locked down? The World Health Organization, the WHO, has ordered governments to prepare to initiate tough new lockdowns due to the strong likelihood that the new monkeypox strain will become a deadly pandemic. For me, I'll take my chances. Simply said, for me, I'll just take my chances. I wasn't for being locked down the first time, and
I mean, I saw a very funny post. I think, you know, we'll not bury the lead here, but for those who are unaware, this disease is spread mainly through one specific means that involves sexual intercourse, generally between two people of the same sex. So I saw some funny posts that were saying, you know, we can just kind of lock the gays down, and we'll probably all be okay. But it's also a bit terrifying too, because I think also attached in the outline as well is the fact that it's actually in California wastewater. So it's already kind of managed to leak out into a public arena.
I was going to say
A lot of
that's
people are
this
pointing.
one right here.
Yeah. Now, if you'll notice, there's a community note attached to this too, and they kind of even let it loose a little bit more, which is the fact that this virus has been detected since 2022, which speaks even more to the fact that, you know, it's been around and it's not really been that much of an issue because of the main way that it's spread. Now, the reason why we're seeing a bit more of it is because we're not dealing with just the first variation of monkeypox, which would have been Clade A1. We're now dealing with, or Clade A2, I mean, forgive me. We're now dealing with Clade A1, which is more specifically Clade A1B, which is the more transmissible, more deadly variant. So those who have been afflicted with this, there is an actual like decent fatality rate on this. Now, I think most of the fatality rate numbers we're getting are from things like the DNR, like the Democratic Republic Congo, like places that definitely don't have the same level of healthcare as we do here in America. So it's hard to stretch truly
Right.
what those numbers would look like in a first world country.
Mhm.
But again, they're going to do anything in their power to be like, boom, bang, scared, like, oh, don't you want to go inside for the next 8 months? You know, there's stuff like that.
Right. Fear mongering tactics
right.
to, you know, try to make people. It seems like fear is a very strong driving force in people, and when people are scared, they're much easier to manipulate. But let's read this one here. Monkeypox, or mpox, known as monkeypox, has now been detected in the wastewater of 2 different districts. Currently, officials are investigating as wastewater from 2 separate districts in San Francisco, California, has detected the presence of mpox, also known as monkeypox. The first detection occurred in the Oceanside neighborhood of San Francisco. Ironic, followed by a second detection in the southeastern part of the city. These findings are particularly concerning as they come just one day after the World Health Organization declared monkeypox a global health emergency. Public health officials are closely monitoring the situation. The additional testing is underway. According to officials, the risk to the public is not yet a concern. So that's the main takeaway that I get from that, is it's not yet a concern. And then let's read the community notes, because this is kind of what was wrong was corrected. The wastewater detections are of mpox Clade 2, not the more contagious Clade 1. It is misleading to state mpox has now been detected. It has been detected since June 20th, 2022, according to the data used by Raw Alert. Okay, and see, that's what I was thinking when I was reading that is, you know, now that it's mentioned, it's becoming more prevalent in the news or whatever. A new person decides they're going to look into it, and then they say, "Oh, look what I discovered." Well, it's not new news. You just recently discovered it, you know, and then and then they like to, you know, tell it from their story. But the reality is, with this correction down here, is that it's been present since June of 2022, and it's the less contagious version, which is a good thing. You know what I mean?
Right. If you actually scroll down, it's a bit of a thread there. He attaches a bit more information because there was an update as well.
Oh, okay. So let's see here.
And so
Update.
that was the update to the wastewater right there.
Here's the link to the wastewater scan. Scan. I almost read scam. Here's the link to the wastewater. I'm so used to everything being a scam nowadays. Here's the link to the wastewater scan for San Francisco. So far, the threat remains low at the time as officials are watching closely. And that's the main thing too, is the officials are paying close attention to it. So it's not like you think it's not going to be able to sneak through past the secret security, secret service, like on when Trump's giving a speech or something.
Yeah.
Here's
again,
Nick's order.
it's
We're not doing this again. And that's, I think,
right.
the sentiment of a lot of people. We're not doing this again. A lot of people didn't do it in the first place.
Never again.
That's funny. Back to the pile.
Yeah. Right.
Have you ever seen that
but
South
that's
Park?
yeah, I have.
Wait a
But that's
minute.
the real reason that you're really only going to get it, right? So it's mainly inflicting upon the homosexual community, the gay community, whatever people prefer. And it's one of those things that's just super unfortunate because it's going to not only do you have, it's going to be very, very particular about one group of people that it affects, but it also is going to be the group of people who I would imagine it could be the most like, please lock us down. Like, I don't want to catch it. It's going
Right?
to be both those groups compounded. They'll be like demanding, like, please, somebody shut the doors, right? Like, I
The,
don't want
the
to get
group,
this.
the group that pounds pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, exactly.
They're big. I'm not even talking about the jab, but just other things. You seem like for a couple years there, every single freaking commercial on TV was some kind of prep pill or something like that.
I mean, that's a
So-
whole other endemic issue, right? Is the fact that all these people are on SSRIs, they're on some kind of antidepressant medication, they're taking some kind of cocktail of drugs, and then I would imagine for most of those who are doing that are also taking extracurricular drugs, whether it's weed, ecstasy, fentanyl. That kind of epidemic just kind of disappeared. All of a sudden, we don't really kind of see people talking about it that much, even though it is still claiming lives a great amount. Right. I think it is, it was there for a while, was the biggest killer of anybody in America, any age that you were, just because of the cartel influx with MS-13. And there's a few other ones that are lesser known, but I think that's really all you need to know, right? It's not like we need to, bring glory to these different cartels and what their name and gang signs are.
Yeah, of course. And ironically, a lot of that, the drug use and things like that were happening in San Francisco too. So
Yeah.
seems like they got a lot going on there. Let's actually let's go over here and let's move on to this Thomas Crooks a little bit here with what's been going on, his recent discoveries.
Oh yeah. The
we're-
more conspiratorial here.
Because we're getting down to the last bit of our show here.
The main one is the Colin Rugg post. You can just actually probably click on that one for the most context.
Okay, so the FBI release, the FBI secretly released would-be Trump assassin Thomas Crooks' body to be cremated before Republican Clay or Representative. I always read Representative as Republican because of the REP. Before Clay Higgins could examine it. That's red flag number one, because we're trying to figure out. There's some, and that's. Let me start off with saying this. There's so much conspiracy, or it's not even conspiracy. There's just so many guesses about what happened that day that has been left to the people to put the pieces of the puzzle together, because we have no official story of what happened from the government, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, we knew after 9/11, the day after it, that it was dudes with box cutters, and they found the ID of the guy on the ground, but they had an official story, they had an official narrative, they knew who did it or whatever. And with this one, all we have is this one dude was a lone gunman, and was taken out by Secret Service sniper or whatever, and that's pretty much all we know. Even though when you analyze some of the tape that happened, hi Jason Peterson,
So, Jason,
you have a lot of questions just from the sound of the gunfire, from the angle that some of the not some of the people that the people that were shot, you know, when you replay it all, there's a lot of questions to still be answered. And without an official release or report or statement, we're left to guess. And so that's what brings us to this here. And as more pieces come out, we can put the puzzle together a little bit better. But a lot of times when they release these new things, more questions come along with it. So we're not really making a whole lot of progress. But this report, the FBI secretly released would-be Trump assassin Thomas Crooks' body to be cremated before Clay Higgins could examine it. Clay Higgins is a guy that I trust, actually, too. His interview with Tucker Carlson was pretty good. And if you guys haven't seen that, I actually recommend checking it out. It's about an hour or two long. But according to a preliminary investigation report from Higgins, the FBI cremated Crooks' body without telling anyone 10 days after the Pennsylvania rally tragedy. Quote, my effort to examine Crooks' body on Monday, August 5th, caused quite a stir and revealed a disturbing fact. The FBI released the body for cremation 10 days after the J13. I have my cursor in the way. After the J13, the report reveals. On July 23rd, Crooks was gone. Nobody knew this until Monday, August 5th, including the county coroner, law enforcement, sheriff, etc. So that's kind of odd. They didn't cremate him at the county coroner. They used their own. You know, that's a question that comes up in, you know, with this piece being revealed. Now we have a new question. Who was the coroner that cremated him? It wasn't done in that county. Okay, sketch. But then yes, right. Butler County coroner technically had legal authority over the body. Okay, so the Butler County coroner technically had legal authority over the body, but I spoke with the coroner, and he would have never released Crooks' body to the family for cremation or burial without specific permission from the FBI. So he's saying essentially that I assume this is the same county coroner that they mentioned in the previous sentence, that he didn't have permission from the FBI and he didn't grant the authority for it to happen. And then finally, this is still a quote, the coroner's report and autopsy report are both late. As of Monday, August 5th, they were a week late. The problem with me not being able to examine the actual body is that I won't know 100% if the coroner's report and the autopsy report are accurate. We will actually never know. And that is just so unfortunate and scary and reeks right. of a rat, of mendacity, I think is the new one that's been going around, the new phrase. Reeks of a mendacity.
I actually covered this on my TikTok earlier, and I think there's a lot of things like that just don't make sense with this. So you talk about how, and you go to like that first sentence that kind of caught you off guard, which is, I really highly doubt that they were able to get into the county coroner's office, you know. So I guess let's start here. The FBI is who had the jurisdiction over everything. So in fact, the coroner couldn't do anything with the body unless he was allowed to do so by the FBI.
Right.
The second thing is I really don't buy the fact that law enforcement, the sheriff, or the county coroner didn't give someone from the FBI access to then go and retrieve the body, right? So I think if we're going with Occam's razor, we're looking at the fact the FBI took things into their own hands. They went to the county coroner's office, retrieved the body, and then cremated either there or they did it so with their own means. Maybe we don't even know if the body is just completely gone or at all.
Right. Maybe it's not even, maybe that's just the report. Yeah. Maybe it's still actually in existence.
And I think that that's like the saying the quiet part out loud is without specific permission from the FBI. I think he's kind of snitching on the fact that if anybody was to come and claim jurisdiction over this and somebody wouldn't think anything otherwise, it would have probably been an FBI agent who went and retrieved the body. Mm-hmm. The next thing with that is most people, you know, they're like, okay, well, what would the reasons be? Like, why would they want to get rid of the body? You know, outside of just making sure that the autopsy report was accurate, the thing that would need to be confirmed with the autopsy report, and this goes along with the lines of the other conspiratorial aspects, right? Where there's people who have been splicing the audio saying there's been more than one gun, I mean, more than two guns, right? Which rules out more than just him and a counter sniper team, that there might have been a third shooter involved. So now you can even match up the entry and exit wounds for the caliber of bullet to be able to verify if it was actually the counter sniper who did fire upon Thomas Crooks. You also have another issue too, which is now you can't even see if there was any kind of trace amount of any kind of drug inside of his body. Did he have some kind of crazy influence going on in him? Was he loaded up on anything? And so again, it leaves us in a position of all to guess. But I love that comment there. But looks like a duck and acts like a duck, especially when, you know, how many times do I got to teach you this lesson, old man? Like we're going through this one more time. And I think if anything, you can't give the benefit of the doubt to the government anymore.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I mean, there's nothing to even give them the benefit of the doubt of right here. They don't even have like an official statement. Like my original point is just we're left kind of guessing and putting the pieces together. The top tweet that the top post that I'm seeing in response is from Valentina Gomez, who I'm loving lately on X. But that's a whole nother story. Deleting email, hiding evidence, and now burning bodies. They really don't want the truth to come out. And I think that refers to a wide range of subjects and people. But
yeah.
And
I mean, what if Secret Service was in on it, right? What if we want to go with that conspiracy theory? So then you take that to our first story. And so the conspiracy is if the Secret Service is in on it, some people are involved, and then these people are going to be left alone as the security detail with Trump at Rikers Island. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a good spot for him to be in as well, you know. And I think some people are actually disappointed with the fact that even on that Elon and Trump space, you know, I think what was his name? Clint Russell pointed this out. You know, his like unwillingness to kind of even nudge or question or provoke anything about what the current narrative is kind of alarming, you know. And it could be byproduct of the fact that Trump himself does believe that Secret Service is in on it. Thus, he's going to wait until he wins the election before he finally, you know, before he kind of like sells the boat out from underneath his own Secret Service detail. There's a lot of things to go there, but like you keep saying, without an official story, it's just like it's wide open, right? It was aliens, it was a dinosaur for all we know, right? Like it's just all of these crazy things can fill on the spot because we don't know.
Right. It forces everybody to be a conspiracy theorist or a professional or whatever, CSI. You know what I mean? It's, you know, it's pretty crazy. And then we got this one here, bombshell from Benny Johnson. Top investigative journalist Julie Kelly reveals research leading her to conclude feds planted the J6 pipe. Assassin Thomas Crooks had a Fed handler and was in communication with an FBI informant, agent, or asset. Quote, it has all the hallmarks of another setup. And I guess we'll just play this whole video. I haven't seen this. It's all right to play the whole thing up, but I'm sure it's from Benny's YouTube channel, so it should be all right.
Yeah.
Make sure that's not going to blast
Why
eardrums. Oh, see, I knew it was going to be loud.
individuals? Let's start with Thomas Crooks.
So good.
How did Thomas Crooks get the training to build pipe bombs?
That's a huge question. And I'll tell you, as soon as I found out, as soon as they reported that he had explosive devices.
Pause it real quick because I hate it when these people go on these shows and they don't have a good mic. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, you can tell she
critique.
has like probably a lapel mic, but it's probably like it's nowhere near her mouth. It's probably like laying on her collar somewhere down here. It's like it ain't helping nobody.
Right. It's just annoying. It's a pet peeve of mine. I had to point it out.
I went, here we go. Same thing as Gretchen Whitmer. Recalling Gretchen Whitmer, Benny, that as this group that they had targeted started to fall apart, they embedded an undercover FBI employee who posed as an explosives expert to show the guys, hey, we can really do this. We can blow up Gretchen Whitmer, this bridge leading to her house, you know, so law enforcement can't get there. They showed in September of 2022, the group of targets, they showed a video by this FBI undercover employee, and this is important, of an SUV being blown up. You know who produced that video, Benny? Yes.
The FBI?
The FBI did. This is the extent that they will go to, really endangering people. Gretchen Whitmer should be irate at the FBI because you had this group, you're goading, and then at the end, here, we can make explosives. We're going to go buy all the elements to do it. Of course, the same thing now with J6 and now the Thomas Crooks thing. How did this 20-year-old kid, and now they don't have any chat messages. They said he had an encrypted chat app, but oh, we can't get into it. Baloney. I've seen this in J6. This is impossible. We're supposed to believe Benny, there is no doubt in my mind that Thomas Crooks was in communications with probably an FBI informant, undercover agent, or an asset from another department, including DHS. He was training.
That's an interesting, just to pause real quick. That is an interesting connection that she was able to draw between, kind of the Gretchen Whitmer potential kidnapping case and then this one, because I don't think I've ever actually heard that before.
At a
There's what I was going to say. There's a guy, he was doing a podcast tour. One of the guys who was involved in the Gretchen Whitmer case, who was, obviously, what's the word, exonerated, because it was so public that the FBI essentially set everything up. And he talked about how the fact of what she said there, I don't know if you caught that, they were buying the explosive materials for him. Like, they were giving him the materials, like, oh, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. And they like set it on a table and they're like, okay, do it, guy. And then it's like the moment he did it, they were like, okay, you're under arrest. Like, we got you. And it's like, dude, this is insane.
Right.
It's so dumb.
Right.
I think the second thing, though, what I was going to say is the connection with the fact that Thomas Crooks, and I think she's about to say it too, Thomas Crooks trained for like months, if not years, I believe, at a gun range that the DHS used, that the local law enforcement used, as well as I think one other government agency used this firing range. So everything kind of already points to the fact that he would have already been known, at least in some form, or at least identifiable to those people in those agencies.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, let's continue here.
Range where DHS employees and other government employees train. It has all the hallmarks of another setup, but this time their target got away from them. I'm not sure that this is what exactly the FBI wanted. I can't say that declaratively, but this is what the FBI has been setting up in all of these domestic terrorism cases. And this is the result, and still terrifying to think of what could have happened to Donald Trump that day.
Truly. So you believe with absolute confidence, and it means a lot to us on this program and to our audience who tune in to see Julie Kelly, who is the best researcher and investigator on all of these fronts. You believe with extreme confidence that one, the pipe bomb was planted just minutes before it was found and was not planted there the night before, and that Thomas Crooks had a federal handler.
Yes, absolutely. Both of the pipe bombs were planted by both of the individual who found it at RNC, I believe. I have to say that. But I have no doubt Thomas Crooks, the typical target, right? Sort of a loner, an outlier, sort of an oddball. Then all of a sudden he becomes a marksman and an explosives expert and knows how to manage a drone and gets away with it. This is classic what we've seen out of this FBI really for decades, but especially more recently, targeting what they call domestic violent extremists. They're not targeting them. They're not arresting them. They are creating them. And that's what's even more dangerous.
I just put a poll up in the in my chat, at least. I'd like to be curious. Is it an inside job? I'd like to just get a poll of what people believe it is, or if people believe it was a standalone Thomas Crooks and he was a deranged woke leftist.
Okay. Let's see here. They showed something right here. I wanted to go back to. Look at that view. They're mysterious. There's just been rumors that there was a guy up here on this part of the water tower, which is nuts to me to think that a person actually crawled up to this top part right here. But I mean, around here, you could take 3 steps and be out of sight. You could stay out of sight until you stepped over here. You could stand right here and have a shot over here, which is the roof that Crooks was shooting from. And then, of course, over here is where Donald Trump was. And this was, I believe, the roof that the snipers were on. But I don't think these snipers actually had a view of him. So I'm not sure which sniper. That's one thing that I'm still not even sure of which sniper took him out. You see the one guy in the video
Yeah,
up
it
here
wasn't
change angles, but
there was
um,
2 teams on that far roof. There was a secondary team, one that's, like, not even on camera. It was him who took the shot.
right.
I
But
believe
still,
the first
look at
guy
these roofs
missed.
over here. This has been part of my theory that nobody's ever mentioned. These 2 roofs over here are equally as far from where Trump was as this roof is. And there's actually a road that just like basically a getaway path. And there's a neighborhood right back here. These are trees in somebody's backyard. The whole scenario is a terrible place for Trump to be set up for any kind of public speaking. But just this video or this angle right here is wild, because if one of these snipers didn't actually, going back to Clay Higgins' theory of wanting to make sure that the caliber that killed Crooks came from the sniper, is important, because there could have been somebody over here watching him, making a martyr of him, essentially. Once you take the shots, we're going to help you get away. And then helping him get away was actually to delete him from this vantage point on the rail, around the rail, not up here, which there's that video of them seeing, like, there's the thing up on top of there. And I don't think you can actually get up to there, get up to this part right here, unless you're really skilled. Maybe
Right, which
Spider-Man.
is I think that's why I'm of the belief that actually, there's that one still frame, and I can't remember which, journalist was covering this. There's actually a cell phone footage that was facing where Thomas Crooks was at, like, at the same moment that he was actually firing, and what it seems to be is that underneath where Thomas Crooks was at, almost like, directly underneath him,
That'd be the
it was
windows
either a
on this wall right
Yeah.
here.
There's like a
Underneath
scope
him.
glint or muzzle flash. It's hard to tell because it's literally like half a frame, but you
Right.
can see there's like a clear kind of bright object in a dark room underneath where he was at.
Right. Like the sun could have been like, you have like a barrel sticking out of an open window and the sun hitting it, and you see the light hitting the top of the barrel or whatever, even if it wasn't
Yeah.
a scope glint. I think that I've seen that, and I think that that's what it the most highly probability is, that there was actually, because if it's like in the shadow, there's just a bit of a shadow, but then it sticks out from the shadow, and you see the sun hit it. It actually becomes pretty easily identifiable. It stands out. But if it would have stayed in the shadow, you would never have seen it because the sun wouldn't have hit it. But that's just kind of my theory. It might have been a scope, but it might not. But this is a cool perspective giver right here, because there's that cell phone footage of the guy walking around and he's filming kind of this direction. You see the water tower in the distance and you see the building in front of him. And now that you see how the building is positioned, and that guy was maybe like filming from literally where this person is. I'm not sure if that's a person, but looking back at this building, you could see how any window on this side of this building, or any window on this side of the building, faced directly in Trump's direction. And then he was laying up here on this down slope, so you couldn't really see him from that side until. But this is another oversight from the Secret Service. There should 100% have been a person on this water tower, like, no doubt. You know what I mean? Look at what you can see from here. You can see anything going on way off in the distance. You can see every single roof down here. You can see all the roofs over there, the roofs over there. This is probably the most important vantage point. And like I said, not from up here, from the balcony down there. You can see the rail.
Yeah. And there's a definite ladder that goes all the way up that water tower.
Yeah, you could definitely, I mean, this part is made to be on. It's an access, to give access or whatever, but I haven't seen anything where there's a ladder going from here up to here. But still, somebody standing right here, somebody standing right here, I think should have been a must. Probably somebody standing right here facing back towards like our direction on the ground, just to make sure that no car comes just driving across this field, behind where these guys are focusing over here and focusing over here from these two perspectives. I mean, this is a 3-man operation for Secret Service to have guys up on this balcony alone, in my opinion. There's nothing going to happen down here that you don't see.
Yeah.
From this perspective.
And I think it might have surprised a lot more than the 3-man operation, right? We're probably looking at something that's probably got a lot of people's hands tied. and
Mhm.
involved, especially given the fact of how poor the response was. And not even just how poor the response was. I mean, when you break it down step by step, where it was like they saw him at this point and didn't say anything. They saw him at this point and didn't say anything. And each of these instances is like he had a rangefinder. He clearly had a collapsible rifle in this image, and like
Mhm.
all these things point to the fact that somebody was actively being like, oh, he must not be that bad. Like, oh, don't worry about that kid, right? Because what other reason would you have to just simply ignore him and lose sight of him?
Right, and I've heard Tim Pool actually make the point that because he has his expertise in some kind of drone development or whatever. Apparently, Crooks was flying a drone around here, and this is restricted airspace. So, like, drones won't even operate unless it's an older drone in a restricted, like, federally restricted or FAA, like, not FAA approved or whatever zone, which this was during the event. So, he either had an old drone or he had some kind of access to like, this kid is so technologically advanced. He knew how to make the bombs, like she said. He had a concealable rifle. But then as this went forward, you can kind of see this is actually like a cul-de-sac, and these are people's backyards. These are, like I said, these are just the trees behind it. So, I mean, a person could have driven up this road, walked through one person's backyard, jumped on a ladder to this roof, and had nearly the same shot unobstructed. You're on the down slope where nobody could see you. It's even more so with this roof. And then furthermore, this is a giant field that's back beyond that. And there's actually literally like just a road that somebody could drive in and out on. They could literally drove up right here behind this building, parked their car, got right up on this roof and shot as well. And there's some angles that I've seen that kind of align with the people that were shot. So, I mean, in the crowd, there's the two people that were basically shot with the same bullet. It looks like that bullet was traveling from this direction in this direction, and it hit the hydraulics and the rail behind the guy. But
you don't find that suspicious?
Yeah, it's just everything's left to be questioned by us because, like I said, the lack of the narrative. And then you had like the 3 bleachers set up right here, and the one that Corey was in was like set up here. Well, that's like a wide open, somebody shooting at Trump from over here, right behind him. So, I mean, that was my initial thought before like a lot of these videos came out, was they were shooting at they were making an X at Trump, shooting from 2 different directions. And of course, they don't care who's behind him. He would have been the main target. And then apparently Corey was still in line with this person over here, like in the way of Trump, essentially. But without even knowing what direction Corey was shot from, like,
right,
left to speculate.
And who knows, maybe it'll be like 3 years down the road. What if this is
the grassy knoll of the JFK assassination? You know what I mean? The second shooter on the grassy knoll type scenario from over here.
Right. I mean, I think most people point out the fact that there's always a patsy, right? There's always somebody that's definitely blamed for all these things, even though we definitely, years down the line, we'll find the data and evidence to prove otherwise.
Right. But I think it's funny that some people think there's a guy that ziplined off of this and got away in a van that was parked down here on the road. That's some Mission Impossible stuff. I don't know if that's
right. I believe he had a cloaking device or something before I believed he ziplined and
right. He's got a Lord of the Rings thing. He's just covered up. He set up.
Yeah, he put the ring on.
He's got like
just walked through the crowd.
Right. But yeah, that's definitely a huge oversight. And I've seen some of the people that former counter sniper military dudes that say that the water tower is the first thing that they would have prioritized as far as protection for this event.
Yeah,
they would have had guys standing around they would have had guys on it. They would have had guys at the base of it, the whole thing. And I mean, we already know that they failed because they didn't have guys stationed around this building. They didn't have guys over here. I mean, it's just a complete flub.
It's a joke, but again, it goes back to stuff we said earlier, right? Like the average person's so apathetic. It's just like, oh, okay, whatever you say, man. It's like, people, it's already fallen out of the news cycle. That's why I pointed to the fact I thought it was good that Elon made it the first topic of that, that monumental space they had.
Yeah.
especially because it seems like it's just like that's old news. Who cares, right? Like forget about that. And it's like we don't even know what happened. What do you mean forget about it?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. They want that to go away because they know the effect that the mugshot had for his campaign. And this even gave his campaign a jolt too. But the faster they can get rid of that type of stuff, which makes me question, back to round it off to our original first topic with the sentencing, maybe possibly happening next month. They got to be smarter than that. You'd think that they're smarter than that to go ahead and give him that next round of boost. I mean, Trump in an orange jumpsuit is it's gonna, I don't know.
People will be wearing orange jumpsuits in public.
Yeah,
People will
exactly.
buy like Halloween outfit orange jumpsuits and they'll be donning them wherever they go.
Right. It's not a dumpster fire, but it's just one of those. It's an igniter. It's a flame igniter. It's a blowtorch.
Yeah.
To his campaign as far as boosting it, in my opinion. And that would be, I mean, just I couldn't even imagine Trump in an orange jumpsuit doing some kind of walk with his hands behind his back and cuffs. I mean, there's people out there, they're salivating at the thought of that, but in my mind, that should have every person that's ever been scrutinized by the law voting for him, because they can relate and understand that they see the not hypocrisy, but the the damage and the whatever that goes along with it.
The unfair treatment, when you're watching somebody like clearly being treated unfairly. It's like there's no better way to galvanize people around somebody when you put them in like the victim oppressor complex.
Yeah, true. That's why a lot of people like to play that victim card. They know it benefits them.
Yeah, right. And it works well with their ideology. It's like one of the only ways they can actually view things from a frame. It's like, so who's oppressing who over here? And that's the way I'll know who to take sides for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep. Well, it looks like we've actually run 13 minutes long. I know we started a couple minutes late, so we've covered that gap. But man, I like that post. Can't use a post in a video and not like it, right? I mean, it's the least you can do.
Especially Benny Johnson too,
even though he doesn't need it.
Right? Yeah. Add to that 54,000.
Right. But yeah, you want to take us out? Remind people who you are and all that stuff.
Yeah, I am on YouTube and X. I am at Atlas Thugged, although on X I got a couple spaces in between my name. Also, I am the host of the show Offensively Accurate. It's where I do a solo show. It's also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. I post the whole things to X. It's kind of a backup in case anything were to happen to me for speaking truth to power. So if you, and I guess like I said at the beginning too, I'm a bit more esoteric than the average person. I come from the Christian populist, kind of Christian nationalist wing. So if you're interested in those kind of topics, let me know, because that's you'll find me on my YouTube there. And generally, that's the framework I approach things with, is from the Christian ethics framework, and trying to get that as the main priority when we actually approach issues, especially such as like, caring less about actual just economic things, but like the root and the source of why we keep coming into these same problems over and over again. But thank you for having me on, Will. I appreciate being on the podcast.
Awesome. It's fun. I think it's a nice conversation, and just want to say thanks to everybody that showed up. Chat's always been fun. Appreciate seeing some faces that were here last week, seeing some new faces. So we appreciate that. Appreciate all the support. Also, make sure to, once again, hit that like button, subscribe to our channels. Mine's called What in the World. His is called Atlas Thugged. And we're out here making videos pretty much on a daily. So we appreciate any support that you guys give us in that regard. And next week, we will be skipping next week. It's fantasy football season. And of course, my draft is next Saturday, so there's no way around it. I tried to say that I was busy, but you know what? Getting 10 guys together on the same day, and most of us have families and stuff, is just something we got to deal with. And so we're not going to have a show next week, but we will be back the week after that. And then once again, we will be missing a Saturday because I believe.
Yeah, I will be having a wedding. Yeah, we'll be going to a wedding. September 14th, I believe, is the exact day. So I'll be missing that weekend. What it might not be the 14th, it might be like the 13th or 15th. But one of those days we'll be also missing. So we'll be missing next week. Go back for I think 3 more episodes, then we'll miss another week again.
Okay. I thought I had it written down. I have it written down differently. I'm gonna change that. But yeah, we won't be here next week. And so, anyways, we'll miss you guys, but don't forget about us. I'm just teasing. I'm just being facetious. But yeah, man, like I said, I do appreciate everybody being here. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll just catch you guys in the next one.
Yep. Take care. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.